Hey, IT Nation, Sean Lardo here with another installment of the Wise Up podcast with my favorite, literally my favorite co-host.
The only one.
Yeah, the only one of this podcast, Matt Topper. How are you, Matt?
I'm doing well, but just as I was saying pre-show, we're doing an afternoon recording today, Duncan free, so this could be interesting.
So you're telling me you'll have less charisma than usual?
Yes, I didn't think it was possible, but decaffeinated Nat might be even less interesting than normal.
That's a hard thing to top. So anyway, moving on. Uh, so what this podcast is really about is for you, the viewer, the listener, the audience, we bring guests on every episode. And these are people that are from within or without or outside of the industry that have accomplishments, that have done things. The goal is that you're able to pull nuggets of wisdom and information from this conversation, hopefully to help your business, or whether it's professionally or personally. This is what the whole goal of all this is for. Again, these are conversations that you may not ever get a chance to have with somebody just because you're never around them. And typically what we find, and I don't know about you, Matt, but I think you probably agree with me, is that when we're at conferences, which is the most times we see people face to face for conversations, it's still a little bit more of a business conversation and more of a pitch almost.
Yeah, it's hard to get into that in-depth conversation at the events. Yeah, you talk with people, but usually you're talking about business ideas, new things coming up, stuff like that. This advice that you can take for how you got there, that doesn't happen at the events. And that's what we're trying to bring with the podcast episodes or installments.
Installments. All right. So, for those either watching, we're in the middle of conference season. So either you've had a chance to engage in some of the IT Nation events. If you have not, I don't know why you haven't. And depending on when you're watching this episode, there will have been something, or there will be something coming up regardless, that you can register for, and you definitely should, like maybe IT Nation Secure, which will have a stellar lineup. And Matt Topper, yours truly, is the one that actually owns the entire responsibility of it being a success. So if you don't like that event, just let Matt know.
Yeah, depending on when this aired, it was either a huge success or not by now.
Exactly. And just let Matt know, regardless. With that said, I think we should probably get on to our guest. And Matt, I'll let you introduce the guest because I've been doing all the talking. So if you don't mind.
Yeah, why don't we bring up James? Actually, I don't know James that well. I'll be meeting him for the first time during this podcast episode, so I don't have a lot of bio info.
Awesome. Well, then I'll give you just a couple quick tips about James. James has been a serial entrepreneur. I met James through, he was in the Pitch It competition. One thing about James that you'll find out is he's extremely intelligent when it comes to business and scaling business, acting as an MSP, have his own MSP, and then also going into the vendor space too, which is a very big challenge for a lot of people. He's had success on both sides. Again, one thing also you'll learn about him is he's very personal about things, very transparent and open. So he's actually an open book for just about anything and everything, which is very endearing. So that said, if we could bring James, the founder and owner of Cavelo, on, that'd be great.
Hey guys.
Was that good, James? Is that fitting?
That was great. But Sean, it's a good intro. You threw Matt under the bus. I could tell that you threw him under the bus, which was great because he hasn't had his Duncan.
Yep. I know. This is rough. How work.
It's rough.
Yeah.
You know what, James? Here's the deal. If you're on with me, you better come be ready when you come on. Let's get it together. Matt should be ashamed of himself.
Yep. Yeah, for not getting my coffee. I almost had to get like Tim Hortons. That would have been even worse.
Go do that.
I don't know how much work I could get for you right now at this particular moment, but okay. Now, moving on to the important thing. James, where are you located today, and where are you from?
So right now I am about 45 minutes just outside of Toronto, Canada, a town called Kitchener-Waterloo. I always say this is where, if you have a BlackBerry, which most people did, that's where BlackBerry was born, and unfortunately where it died. And so we're lucky because it's definitely a tech hub. So we have a lot of great engineering folks, marketing folks, etc. And there's a lot of cybersecurity companies here as well.
Nice. And you're from there originally?
I am originally from just outside Kitchener, called Guelph. It's kind of a wedding capital. A lot of weddings are done there, and it's really only 30 minutes away. But yeah, I spend half my time here and the other half on the road. I spent a lot of time in New York City. I think, Matt, you and I talked about that before. And then obviously going to events as well. So spending a lot of time in Orlando. Seems like that's where the events are. Actually, I'm off to Vegas this Sunday. It is. I'm off to Vegas this Sunday doing a panel session. So yeah, that's kind of my I just like to, and I'm happy to be here today.
Awesome. So, so we do want to get into your background more, but real quick, let's just get the Cavelo piece out of the way. You are the founder of Cavelo. What does Cavelo do, and what made you start doing this, and what made you build this company?
So, I ended up selling off my last company, which I can talk to later. I spent about 8 months not working. And it's interesting when you are used to working your entire life. And I like to call it a hobby for me. It's like I really enjoy working. And so I remember the day after selling my last company, I looked at my phone and there was no messages. So it was weird for me, but I got to spend a lot of time with family. And so that was important. And I recharged. And then a good 8 months into it, I realized like I've got to do something. And so, Sean, I think you can appreciate this. When you have founded companies and sold them, at some point you're almost unemployable in the sense of like you're not just going to go and get a normal job per se. It's just hard, right? Because you're so used to your own and kind of that fast paced lifestyle. And so I started to think about what's my next venture. I had 5 ideas. Some of them were radical in the sense of like, healthcare space. And, but then I realized my passion is in the channel. I really enjoy MSPs. I was an MSP. I will tell you the whole ecosystem has changed in the last, call it a couple of years with private equity. And the space is just leveling up, which is absolutely amazing. And so I focused my time on what's the problem that I could solve for MSPs. And everyone asked me, how do you come up with the idea? It's not hard. There's a book called Lean Startup. I tell everyone to read it. It's very basic. You talk to folks and you understand what the problem is. And you have to talk to many, many different folks and different personas. And what we decided to do was create a platform that would enable MSPs to have cybersecurity practices like MSSPs, and they can kind of pick and choose to make it super easy so they don't have to hire expertise in-house to go and find the enterprise grade software to do it and then figure out how to tie it all together. And so that's what we did. We started with a platform, made it modular. This was about 4 years ago, and it's just going awesome. We're super excited, and we're very fortunate to have all the support, even from you folks, and go. The events work. I will say that, and we're at the stage where we're in that growth stage. And it's interesting when you're in that growth stage, the problems kind of change in the sense of, I remember it's like your first customer and then you sell your first customer. You're like, oh my goodness, like this is amazing. And now it's like, I don't even know how many customers we have. You know what I mean? It's just like, I got a great team and they run the show and I support them.
Which was harder, getting the first customer or getting the first MSP client?
We sold it only MSP. So first customer was an MSP. I think the thing that happens when you get your first customers, you don't know if they just are doing you a favor, because you always go to the people right? And so, I tell people the scariest thing is when you get a golf clap, right? Like people are saying, "Oh, I like your product," and you don't know if it's solving a problem. So, I think for us, it was first customer. I wouldn't say is difficult. I think when you start to get some volume, everyone says it's $1 million of ARR. I think it's 2 or 3. But once you start to get to that volume, and then you start to the true, well, you're doing something well when you don't have a lot of churn, right? And you know that customers are renewing. And now what we're finding, which is absolutely amazing, is we're getting a lot of expansion orders. So, we'll sell data discovery, and then back into vulnerability management. We're replacing more than one tool. And because there's this thing with the MSP world, it's like once you create this trust and you don't let them down, they're all in. And that's what it's all about. It's being part of the ecosystem and making them successful. And so I don't know if it's the first customer. I think it's really when you start to get that volume and making sure that they're happy.
Well, I mean,
Actually,
it's a good point, right? It's
when I ask that, I would say this: not so much how is it hard to get the first customer or the first pool paying customer, because I think that's the difference in the conversation. Because you have two options when you start a business. We know either you come with a concept, everybody's like, "Oh my god, that's amazing." You start adding customers on, and you backfill development, or you develop everything and you start going after customers. Right? No matter which way you go, there's still a big difference between you add a customer, your buddy signs up with you for a tenth of the price to vet it out with you and be your beta, right? And that got it. Like, so I think it's more about when do you actually go to market and get your first legitimate customer, which is somebody you don't know.
Yeah,
buys full price.
Yeah,
100%. Yeah, and so I think, like, obviously you go out and you get as many, like, it's chicken and the egg, right? You want to test the product by getting customers. You give it for free or a low price, but certainly when you don't know the customer, and like I said, now it's like I'm not on sales calls. We have a machine, top of funnel all the way to deploying the product, and so we just landed our first $500,000 deal out of the UK. And they're one of your customers as well. And so it's
nice.
It's a weird feeling of, if you start to get momentum, you don't know when, but you can start to feel it. And the only thing I'll say that is that, doing this multiple times is still a grind, and everything takes longer than you want it to take. And you just got to have patience. You absolutely have to have patience.
Is there a sign that you really have something, like, and it's not just, your friends and buddies being next to you? Like, what's the cutoff point? Is it when somebody buys a full price? Is it when they stick around long?
It's when you get a couple years of renewals and you start to have a linear growth model. Like we're at a point now where it's like we can start to predict our quarter. Like we have momentum. It's we could start to it's a little bit of a science and an art, obviously. But the early days, we were just like hoping and praying, right? Like that's the truth. And the challenge too is like you go and you raise money, you build a product. We tell the investors it takes a year, but it really takes 2, if not 3. And to build a product that's ready for market. And then you bring on sales folks, they can't sell the product because it's either not ready or there's no brand awareness, and you're just like grinding, right? And then, you don't want to raise too much money and then throw all this money in the go-to-market when you're not ready. And so you gotta kind of slow roll it, and you gotta learn. I call it like kind of the science experiment. Like, who's your ICP? Like we really didn't know our ICP at the start. Now we do. And all that stuff plays into it. And like, I think it's important to note there's no right or wrong answer. like one of the best things I did was bring on marketing right away. My last company, we didn't even do marketing. And so, you got to believe in certain pieces of the puzzle and just spend the money. And then there's other pieces where you got to start to see certain KPIs taking place, and, what's the sales cycle, and, how are the customers using the product? Like I'm a big, we carve off 30% of our roadmap for customer feedback. We make our customers part of the journey. And when they start to give us feedback and we do what they are asking, like you get a happy customer. And I always say they're the ones that are in the trenches, not me. They should be the one telling us certain pieces of the product because they know best.
I want to come. You've mentioned this a couple of times here, right? You're not part of everything anymore. You've already said, I've hired people. I'm not part of everything that's going on exactly. I don't need to be part of things. And like talking about sales, for instance, and whatnot, right? A lot of CEO entrepreneurs struggle with letting go. How did you determine when you could remove yourself from all responsibilities? Like, what was it? How do you determine that?
Yeah, I can tell you because it happened in the last 6 months. And I recently had a conversation with one of the individuals who kind of took over some of the responsibilities. I think for me, last year I was traveling a lot, and there were certain things that, like, I was in charge of product. I was doing all speaking engagements, and I was doing a lot of the sales and raising money.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I realized at the end of last year is, like, I just dropped the ball. Like I wasn't doing a great job at anything. And so when you start to realize you're the bottleneck in the business, then you realize, like, this isn't about me and my ego. I got to get out of this, right? And so, I think it is a challenge. I'm actually surprised I did as good of a job as I did in kind of letting go. It's a common joke around the office because I don't think people thought I could. And so for me, it's like trust. It's truly trust. Call me Italian or whatever it might be, but like when you hire people that you trust, and like they're going to make mistakes, and the idea is they should have more experience in that domain. But I was lucky because I had all the people around me, and I just need to enable them. And I'm there for their problems now, right? They come to me with real problems, and I always say, it's like I hardly ever make a decision in the company, like maybe one or two, and they're not usually material. It's more like, which way should we go? And it's more like, what's your opinion? And I'm fine to do that, but I think that you just got to surround yourself around people that are smart and they're engaged and they have the experience and they want to run that part of the business. And I think I'm just lucky in that sense. But one of my mentors always said, as the CEO and founder, your job is to always try to work yourself out of the business. And so I also have people that I've talked to on a regular basis who've grown many, many very successful companies. And, you got to listen to them.
Yep, agreed. Did you have any requirements that to your staff? Like, you want me to, other than the fact you realize you're the bottleneck, but how do you set up reporting, or what do they have to do to make you feel the trust that you need to pull away?
Yeah. So for me, I talk to them regularly. And so I think there's always got to be, I'm sure if you talk to them individually, they'll tell you a different story, Sean. They'll probably make it seem a little harder than what I'm trying to say here. But, I think it's like, you got to go through the whole, we have a problem. How do we solve it? Like you can't just bring someone on and you trust them. You got to be in the trenches and have those butting head moments where it's like, like I always like to say, it's like the devil you know, the devil you don't know. I could say that about myself because I can be very difficult to work with, right? I'm a very passionate. I like to move fast. I don't necessarily, I'm very abrupt in my communication style. And I probably, you know, um, I probably haven't realized it's a challenge for me with others. And so what I found with people that trust that are in my circle, it's because they add something that I don't have. And there's no other way of building trust than going through the walking through it. Like you got to go through some conflict. And at the end of the day, it's like I always say, it's like I might have done it differently, but as long as we get to the end result. And I find with my team, and I might be making this up a little bit, but for the most part, we're all aligned. Like they understand me probably just as well as I understand them, and they understand my quirks, but they also understand my vision and what I want to do, right? And so once you start to see that play out, then you start to build that trust.
Makes sense.
So James, you've been both an MSP and a vendor, and hesitating to use the word side because there's this weird antagonistic relationship sometimes between MSPs and vendors. We're all just vendors in a way. What are some things that you wish MSPs knew about life on this side of the fence, or things that are different? Like, what would you go back and tell yourself about what it's like being a vendor now that you're an MSP, or vice versa?
Yeah. So quickly, just my story. I ended up acquiring an MSP, a small MSP, and I grew that by doing cybersecurity because that's my background. And what I learned is it's a hard business. Like it truly is a hard business. And I think understanding that is key. I mean, at the end of the day, cash is king for them. They got to make their customers happy. Any MSP wants to make reoccurring revenue, which is a real pivotal change in the industry from selling NetApp or Dell or anything like that. And so there's been the MSP world has changed significantly over the last 8 years. And for me, what I realized is what's key on the MSP side is they have customers that trust them, right? And so you as a vendor, you're an extension of that. And so this is why it's important for me. I always say, like, when I bring on a new MSP, it's the handshake that matters, right? Contract aside, right? Because you should never be looking at the contract unless something goes wrong. It's the handshake to say, I'm not going to ever say things will be perfect, but I'm there when things need to be fixed. Because when I was an MSP, that's critical, right? You don't want a vendor that just throws a product over the fence after the sale and they're like, good luck. You have to be part of the entire sales cycle and make them successful. The worst thing in a startup or as a vendor is churn, right? That is a red flag. You could sell a product for a year and have a year contract, and then boom, you're done after that. And so for me, it's understanding what is important to the MSP and being there for them in all different aspects. If they lost one of their big accounts, well, instead of holding them against their contract, which they're going to churn anyways, be there for them, find a solution, right? And that's what we do.
Any words of wisdom for the other direction? Like, there's a reason we don't put the pricing on the website, or there's a reason we want to call you. The typical complaints you always hear in MSP spaces about vendors.
Yeah, I mean, so I understand MSPs have had some challenges with vendors. I think we can I think that there has been, every MSP's got a story, is probably what I'd say. I think that picking your vendors is probably, and doing the right due diligence is probably the most critical thing for the MSP, and understanding that tech stack. Like I said before, like we have a great product. I stand up for the product every day, and I'll say that, but it's the people that matter, right? You got to be there, and so having that face-to-face conversation, like I've had situations where a large client will say, we're not buying anything until I come up and see them, take them for dinner. And that's them doing due diligence on us, right? And so I think the important part is to keep doing that.
Mhm.
And I'll say this: it sounds a little corny, but you want to work with people that you enjoy working with, right? I'm not going to say it has to be family or anything like that. And so I think that's what's important when picking a vendor, is making sure they got the same culture, the same vision. And I think once you click, that's where you just gotta dig in.
Well, I'll come back to that in a second. The fact that I think that if an MSP does a due diligence and they decide this is the culture of a there we want to work with, there are companies that will put pricing on the website and companies that won't. I think there's two reasons why people don't put pricing up there. One is because they have to figure out what package makes sense. You don't want to scare them away with the price because you can't really account for all the different setups maybe, or whatever maybe, right? The other is you don't put price on a website if you're a vendor that does channel only, because you never want end users to find you and see pricing. That's so this is why I typically see it.
Yeah, and on the pricing side, we don't put our pricing on the website because there's more depth in a conversation that has to be had. If I put, like, I see a lot of vendors, they throw pricing on there, and the pricing is just like, when you actually add it up, it's a lot more than what's on the website. So for me, I think like it's a little bit of an understanding, make sure it's a good fit, and then having the conversation about pricing, and not just throwing something out there to try to get people to think that the price is lower, but then when you actually do and understand the environment, it's higher. I think that's misleading. And so for us, and we might at some point, but it's evolving too.
Yeah. Yeah, what I'm hearing is there's just a lot of nuance to this, right? It's not quite as cut and dried as you'll hear in the various complaint departments around the internet.
Yeah, for sure.
But doesn't it? I also feel like it correlates with the way MSPs go to market also, because how do MSPs put their price on their websites either? Really, some do for some things, but not for the total package of a managed contract.
Well, right, if on the MSP
It's
side,
hard to say.
Yeah, you can't call in and say, I have 5 employees, what's my price, right? It's a much more complicated thing than that.
So there's more depth that needs to be.
Yeah, it's like one, you sell assessment first. They sell an assessment first. Well, let me assess. It's going to cost you this much. So it's difficult. I do, but I also think that how much do you attribute to, especially the younger generation now, it becoming more of a retail transactional thing across the board? Because Matt's younger, so he doesn't count as much. But when we grew up, James, because Matt, he's a wee baby.
I'm 26.
Well, you're not that old, but you're not as young as he. Matt's like 18, so it's different, Okay. And but no, but if you think
I'm happy to hear that I look 26, Sean.
I said 18, you look 18. I mean, like glad, but the buyer has changed completely, right? We didn't have Amazon when we grew up. We didn't have that, right? We didn't have the instant gratification and also a price for everything. When you went to a car dealership when I was growing up, there were made up prices on the windshield, and it was everything was negotiable. Where now everything is the internet has changed everything. So I wonder how much do you think you account to just that people are used to buying in a certain way now, and there has to be some level of conformity. Is that the problem, or is it just people like to argue?
Yeah, so I think I don't know the answer to that, but here's probably what I'd say the challenges on the MSP side, and my experience there is, everyone wants things for cheap, right? And then when they have a problem, they expect the world, right? And so I think what's taken place is, especially with cybersecurity, you can't get it for cheap. Like you don't get Norton antivirus, and you don't just call it a day. There's layers, and you can go to an extreme, or you could kind of do the bare minimum. So I think that the real challenge is the complexity of the tech stack has grown compared to what it was before. Because think about it, back in the day, it was like you order a Dell laptop, comes with Norton antivirus, you throw the image on it, you put in whatever else, you ship it out. Now it's so complex, and there's so many different caveats to the use case, and understanding what is the right thing to do for each customer. And I think certainly MSPs have gotten to a point where they have 3 different tiers. You pick the package, nothing outside of that. And I think that's allowed, that streamline is the right thing. And I think that that's where, from my understanding and talking to a lot of MSPs, that's where a lot of MSPs are going. And so for us as a vendor, it's like making sure that we can align to the pricing that they're selling to their end customers. And that's what's the proxy? Is it per seat, per agent, whatever it is? We have to be flexible in that sense. So I think the dynamics have changed over the last few years based off the complexity of the tech stack.
So, what's different about cybersecurity, right? You took the extreme example of way back when it was Norton or ESET or whatever antivirus being enough almost for cybersecurity, and now, right, if you look at some kind of mind map of cybersecurity, there's like tools and technologies all over the place. How do you start navigating that if you're either an MSP or just any business looking to do cybersecurity? Like, how do you start untangling all this complexity?
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenge. Everyone says they're doing cybersecurity, and you go to the website, you're more confused than ever. What I've seen is regulatory compliance have kind of changed things in the sense of nice to have versus need to have. Whether or not it's NIST, CMMC, and I think the difference is, like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we used to sell pen tests, and that was it. You give them the pen test and they would do nothing with it. It would check a box, right? We're kind of getting to a point where it's like, folks need to do something because of the liability issues that are out there. And so, I think the whole industry is leveling up in that sense. And so I think that you're going to find now is that, folks actually want to remediate. They want to lower their risk. And it's because of the fact that they either had a breach or they know someone who has. And it's only a matter of time before that happens. I see a lot of, at the very start, a lot of customers would go and get cybersecurity insurance. That's all they would do. It was wild. They're like, I'm covered. I got cybersecurity insurance. Well, then they would have a breach. Then they would get a renewal, and they would be like, well, we're going to cancel your insurance. Yeah. Right. So now what's happening is the insurance companies are doing due diligence, saying you have to do ABC of best practice, which is like vulnerability management, knowing where your data is, who has access to the data, all your assets, because of the fact that because people are working remote, people like the adoption of cloud services is not just like going to Office 365. It's a minimum of 30 different cloud providers, all the way up to hundreds. So just from that perspective alone, your data is everywhere. So that's changed the element and the overall risk. And so what I'm finding is a lot of folks are changing their tone, and they're actually doing something to remediate and truly want to try to mitigate their risk.
So are you seeing organizations have a more, I almost want to use the word mature, but like a more holistic view of cybersecurity? And what I mean by that is, historically, the challenge for orgs was to figure out what tools to throw in the right bucket and call it cybersecurity, as opposed to like a more mature conversation about risk and deciding what to take on. Do you see that starting to shift, or is it really still searching for the magic easy button tool stack?
Yeah, so here's that's interesting. I'll say like this. What I found was the larger MSPs would go and they would get enterprise solutions, and then they would have to engineer how to put it together. And so then you're hiring experts and you're paying a lot of money for the tools. And but now what's happening is all MSPs want to do some form of cybersecurity. I won't say all, but most do. They're looking for, how do I just turn it on? Right? Where's the easy button? And then it's really hard to hire talent in that space. So they want automation, right? And so, this is what we're focused on in the product is how do we automate and streamline the workflow for MSPs so that they can focus on the high touch stuff, whether or not it's talking to the customer, all that stuff. And they don't have to copy paste and go to portal to portal and all this stuff. So, I am definitely seeing a lot of folks are trying to streamline their tech stack more and more, just ease of use and all that good stuff.
So but let's dig into this just a little bit deeper on that. To your point, you can't just add technologies on. Everybody 4 years ago decided they were an MSSP. Everybody did. They're all like, yeah. And they're like, I bought that one tool from that one company. Now I'm an MSSP. That's not factual, right? It's just not factual.
Yep.
So, and then I'll take it over to the other side of the vendors where we unfortunately live in a world of ambiguity of cybersecurity, of who does what technology wise, where they fall in the layers of cybersecurity. What's your advice on what an MSP should look at in general? You mentioned the ABCs real quick, but I look a little bit further than just technologies because I also think it's about people too, the experience level, what they should be doing. So where do you put where would you suggest somebody start? Because there's a lot.
Yeah. So I think understanding the verticals that the MSP go after and understanding, is there certain regulatory compliance like SEC when it comes to financials, financial services, CMMC is a big one, because then you can stay focused on what is that tech stack and what do you need for it. So if it's CMMC, detection of CUI information, and then what I find is it's not necessarily a report anymore. Like I said, the old days was pen test. This virtual CISO is real. It's having these reviews with the customer, understanding their environment. You're never going to remediate everything. There's 60,000 vulnerabilities out there. You just don't go and patch everything. And it's not a one-dimensional view anymore. It's like understanding your risk based off of where your data is. Like that's all changed. And so I think for this kind of the starting point is understanding, the end customer and their pain points, and then kind of backfilling with the tech stack. And then making sure that you have, experts that can talk to, what is the right steps and best practices moving forward.
Yeah, I think you totally hit the nail on the head in that it's not just about finding the magic tech and just shoehorning that in literally everywhere to all of your clients.
There's no magic.
Right. Well, unplug the PC, right? That might be the only magic.
Yeah.
But let's say that you're an MSP that really hasn't gone down the security road much yet, right? You're still doing traditional IT support for the most part. What would you say to someone who's trying to get started in the security game? Should they set their sights all the way on becoming an MSSP? Is there something, just the security focused MSP that they should be adding on? Without putting you on the spot of the what's an MSP versus MSSP, because we could talk about that for like 3 hours. What should the first thing that, someone trying to get into the security game or trying to up their game in security be doing?
Yeah, so I think taking a step back and thinking about MSSP versus MSP, and like the line's blurry. But you have to be careful too, because if there's a church and state kind of role, which if you're an MSP and you're testing your own cybersecurity posture, it'd be like me building a house and I'm the home inspector too, right? So there's, I would say like a true MSSP would just focus on cybersecurity, right? But that's not the world we live in that sense. I think there's nothing wrong with doing kind of the best practice pieces. And so I always say, starting with kind of the assessment that Sean talked about, and then really understanding like vulnerability management. Every MSP should be doing vulnerability management. It's kind of like table stakes, right? And so, and then remediation is the other piece. But then you can go. So I think the baby steps are, again, making sure that you are doing kind of the bare minimum of, multi-factor, all that good stuff. Vulnerability management, asset discovery, all that stuff is kind of like you just got to do. And then not going too advanced, like MDR, probably you don't need to do it. That's where the state and church kind of works out. You kind of want that to be someone else as a third party. And so I think that there are certainly services MSPs can do, and even more on the compliance side. But there's ones that I think, you have to separate, like MDR and stuff like that. I think what's going to happen in the MDR space is, it's just going to be Microsoft's going to own it, Amazon's going to own it. It's just going to be part of your normal package, right? And AI can be applied to that level of service, and not eliminate the human factor, but humans make mistakes, right? So yeah, I'd probably say starting with the kind of best practice piece, but understanding the difference between state and church and be able to separate those duties is important.
So it sounds like one part is it's an operational maturity play as well then, before you decide on what you should take on. Because if you're a traditional MSP and you add on security, you have to be very mindful of how much you can always support on that security. You mentioned vulnerability management, obviously table stakes. That's a relatively easy thing to support. That's why. So again, if it's an automated practice, not as big of a deal. But when it comes to the deeper stuff, when you start talking about like real pen testing, right? Or anything that's going to require a body, even, let's just say, maybe that's when you start outsource, maybe.
Outsource. And like, think about like this, Sean. You try to build your own SOC, security operations center. You got to be 24 hours.
Yes.
Right? It's not an easy business to grow, to scale it. You got to hire really talented people. You got to have workflows, and they still make mistakes. So there's a huge liability play there. I'm not suggesting MSPs don't go there, but like outsourcing it is probably more appropriate. Focus on what you're good at and do a good job.
No, I would agree. I mean, thinking about the amount of coverage you need from the beginning and the amount of clients you need to start recouping some of that before you break even, running a stock is not an easy thing to do.
No, it's not. It's not. I've seen it, and it's challenging, and good on the people that have done it. But again, focus on your wheelhouse and what you're good at.
I like that. I appreciate that. I think if people focused on what they were good at, they'd have more successful businesses instead of chasing everything.
Can't do everything. Even for us as a vendor, you can't do everything. If we started doing training and security awareness, like you got to focus on what you're good at. And by the way, like if you're just okay at everything, that's not good either.
Yeah.
So
Agree. All right, Matt, we got like a few more minutes here, so
Yeah, I think we have time for one more question. We'll just end this here. This has been really fantastic. So, James, we always ask someone to come on the show to end with one particular question. And we ask in the form of a habit, what's something like you're giving advice to someone maybe who's an MSP thinking about going down the starting a software company route, or maybe it's ways that you'd like to see MSPs and vendors interact with each other. What's a habit that someone should either start doing or stop doing? Really, it could be for anyone in the audience, but what's your advice to them?
Yeah, like I'll just pick on myself. One of the things I've learned about myself is I'm not a patient person. And, you've got to be patient. Things don't happen on your time frame, and that's fine. And probably from a good habit standpoint, and I think I learned this through my career, network. Be really good at meeting new people. I tell people, like, I never know, I'll meet people all over the place, and you never know if you're meeting someone who is going to be a partner, be an investor, acquire your company. Like, every person you meet um, could be something special in your network. And so, I think, going to the events for me, everyone says, as a CEO, why are you at the events? I'm like, no, 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 no. I go because I care. And that's when you meet interesting people, right? It's not just me going, I have a whole team. I've met CEOs of other vendors where I can pick up the phone right now and talk to them. And then the other piece, I know I'm kind of answering this in piecemeal, but I think it's so important to surround yourself around people that have done it before. Because it's hard, and I call it therapy. You pick up the phone and someone's done it, they can walk you down and they could say, no, no, been there, done that. It's just being able to have those tough conversations with folks that have done it is so important, because it's not easy. It is very difficult at times, but it's really fun. And then that's the last piece. Have fun while you're
I love
I
it.
like that.
And it's
That's-
universally good advice.
It is. The words right out of my mouth, Matt. It is universal good advice. You mentioned have fun, and you also mentioned being a hobby in the same interview. So
I mean,
I think that
you got to get up in
very
the morning.
you enjoy what you do, and hobbies are supposed to be enjoyable.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I don't know. Maybe it all depends on what you're getting up for. Like if you're getting up like Matt does to go run for like 5 miles, like that's not necessary. That's dumb.
Unless I'm running from someone, you won't catch me running.
Right. Or there's like an ice cream truck and it's going down the street. Then I'm running maybe, and even then I'm probably not running. I'll just yell real loud.
You just have to not be the slowest person if you're getting chased, so you're good.
Bear. Running from a bear, and there's two people, just make sure you're not the slowest, right?
I have no problem with kicking you in the leg when we're running from the bear. It's fine. Because I'm definitely going to be the slowest.
Yeah, I hear that.
So
I think Matt will win.
you know what's going to happen. All right. So, James, thanks for the time, man. This is great. We could dig into so many things if we had more time, but nobody wants to listen to us that long. We know that. So, that's why we keep it within this time frame. Is there any other parting words, Matt, that you want to throw in here real quick before we get off?
I think we can just all learn a lot from James, who has shown success both on the MSP side and the vendor side, and it's just a good reminder that it's not like this historical MSP versus vendors celebrity deathmatch thing, right? We're all just companies.
Yeah, I agree.
That's a great idea. Why can't we do a boxing match? Yeah, Ben's.
Again, I would lose, Sean.
Vendor versus MSP. Oh, it depends on who you're up against, really. I mean, it's vendor versus MSP. Like, then he can just duke it out.
I think
For chairs.
Per charity, then it's okay.
That's good. Yeah, everything for charity is much better. You feel okay about getting beat up. Just saying.
But no, thanks for coming out.
Yeah, thanks. This was great.
Oh, I appreciate it. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, I mean, you're impressive, man. We're happy to have you on. I hope I will see you soon here.
Did I pay you to say that?
Let me check my account. No, not yet. I'm waiting for the deposits.
It's an absolute pleasure.
So with that said, we're going to end this show. thank you all for attending, and all of you that watch, thank you so much for watching. If you guys have any suggestions on any guests you'd like to see on the show, let us know. If there's a topic you want to cover, let us know. Otherwise, until next time, we're out of here. Deuces.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thanks.